I'm J. Jermaine Bay of Melodian Morris Cranium, Ante, Colorado. The acronym is AMPAC. I'm the Chief Judge of Consular Court. Today is Class 71. Class 71. What did we learn in Class 70? Well, we're finally starting the reading of the Act of Algeciras of 1906, Chapter 6, right? So what are we learning immediately in Chapter 6? This is all about what? Public works, public services. It is all about how to govern the empire. Because in the empire, we must understand logistics, right? It's all about logistics, right? We must understand how to maintain the equality of all the human beings in the empire. All of the human beings in the empire of Morocco are not to be deemed guilty of not knowing about the past. We as Moors have to understand that we have delayed our own justice. At the same time, the colonists understand they've assisted in delaying that justice. But the reality is this: at the end of the day, we have to find a way to get back to amity and commerce. That's exactly what the Sultan set forth. And since the Moors keep saying the treaty is supreme law of the land, and guess what? We got to get back to amity and commerce. We got to get back to peace and friendship. And since Moors are now enacting their constitutions, and we're getting back into sovereignty and independence through our constitutions, we're understanding now if in fact we make the choice to accede to the United Nations Charter of 1945. According to the Charter of 1945, the UN, it's all about peace and security. It's not about war. The scourge of war is over. And it's up to the two parties in any treaty to maintain peace at all times. So we start to get into Chapter 6. It's important for the Moors to understand that we got to learn how to govern the affairs of our fellow Moors. And we got to learn how to govern the affairs of Moor subjects. And we got to learn how to govern the affairs of foreigners in Morocco. This is very important to understand. So how do we do that? Because the Moors have been seeking their liberation for decades. But right now, if Moors overnight have their states, how do we govern? How do we make sure that the human beings within our territories, our own uti possidetis jurisdiction, how do we make sure that their sovereignty as human beings, their just cogents, is well taken care of? Well, the answer is in our treaties. The obligation is on Moors to take care of all the inhabitants in our land without distinction, without trying to utilize this thing called nationality to try to supervene the impossibility of all human beings in Morocco or have an opportunity to come under amity and commerce. This is very important to understand, Moors. Noble Ali said to do what? Come into this with love instead of hate. What does he mean when he says that? The reality is that's what it says in the contracts. It's not a matter of choice that we come into this with love instead of hate. The treaty says peace and friendship. It's about amity and commerce. We have to master the fundamentals. And the fundamentals say what? It's about peace and security. All right, so let's go ahead and get into Class 71, okay? So you know AMPAC opens up about the Constitution. All the Moors and all of the territories, commonly known as the trust territories, that the United States Corporation is claiming as trust territories, sometimes commonly known as constituent chartered states. The United States has 50 plus constituent chartered states. They're all charters, right? They're all franchisees of the franchisor commonly known as the United States Municipal Corporation. And in international law, the United States is known as what? An international organization. Domestically, they're known as a municipal corporation. But international law has defined them as an international organization, right? And the United States has 50 plus organs of their international organization, commonly known as chartered states, constituent chartered states, all right? Okay, so the Constitution is very important, Morris. This is the only way for you to have post-millennium per consanguinity, right? That means after the day that you're ratified, declared, and promulgated Constitution, you have now restored the nationality of your people. You restored now the bloodline, your inheritance. You're now the successors based upon your latitude, longitude of your territory, right? So this is what we got to understand is more. Let's move on. All right, let's go ahead and get into the class. All right, so right now we started the reading of chapter 6, which is about a declaration relative to public services and public works. Now, obviously, we've already started reading Articles 105 through 109. So I'll go ahead and do a recap, right? We won't have the mother start off. She's already read the first 5. I'll go ahead and do the recap so we get through 105 to 109 and start breaking this down a little bit more, okay? All right, so obviously we've already gone through 105 and 106. Let's do a quick recap. Okay, Article 105. With a view to assuring the application of the principle of economic liberty without any inequality, the signatory powers declare that none of the public services in the Sharifian Empire can be alienated for the advantage of private interests. It's very important to understand more. Article 105 is one of the most important articles out of all the 122 articles. Why is that? Because the United States of America and the United States International Organization agree that they're private enterprises. They're private municipal corporations. They're districts. They're subsidiaries. They're entities. They're persons. They're artificial persons can't do anything to supervene the impossibility of performance of our organic Moorish states. They've already agreed in Article 105 they can't do anything to alienate, to subjugate, right, to subordinate our Moroccan law. That's the bottom line, right? Now, you have to understand this word right here, Article 105. With a view to assuring. What does assuring mean? It's assured. Like an insurance policy, it's guaranteed. They are guaranteed. So therefore, 105 is one of the reasons why the United States foreign policy says they can't have anything to do with the question of what happens in Morocco. Because they know that they're a foreign corporation doing business in Morocco. They have no say because the United States is not a state. They have no sovereignty whatsoever to talk about the affairs of states, especially when it comes to a Moorish state. So they agreed in Article 105 that they have to now take a back seat to competent Moorish states. State with a capital S. Okay? All right, so let's move on to Article 106. Article 106. In case the Sharifian government should invoke the aid of foreign capital or invoke the aid of foreign industry for the working of public services or for the operation of public works, roads, railways, ports, telegraphs, and other public works, etc., the signatory powers reserve to themselves the right to see it that the authority of the state, capital S, over these great enterprises of the general interest remains entire. This is very important. So what's happening here? The signatory power. Who are the signatory powers? Well, that was the original 12 colonists, right? But there's only one colonist now remaining that's kept their name on the Act of Algeciras as well as other Moroccan treaties. And who is that? United States of America. The United States of America still has their name as a party to these Moroccan treaties, to these Moorish treaties, right? So there's no more signatory powers. There's only one signatory power, and that's the United States of America. They're the last ones, right, in the empire claiming any type of jurisdiction. Where does their jurisdiction come from? Our Moorish treaties that gives them a right to be tenants in Morocco. That's it. So right here, it says, the authority of the state, capital S, which is the Moorish state, oversees, right, these great enterprises of general interest remains entire. So what remains entire? All the public works, public services. However, what does our Moroccan law say? That we enact as our internal law. So the treaty has a language, but where's our Moroccan law that supports this? This is where Moors have to come in and understand legislation. We have to enact legislation that talks more about Article 106. What remains entire? Well, we have to define that. What does specifically remain entire? That's still up to the Moorish governments to determine what is considered to be entire. Right? So it's left open-ended. Okay? That must be understood. But look here, Moors. Let's start at the top again. Article 106. Article 106. Okay. Article 106. In case the Sharifian government should invoke the aid of foreign capital or invoke the aid of foreign industry for the working of public services or for the operations of public works, roads, railways, ports, telegraphs, and other public works, the signatory powers reserve to themselves the right to see it that the authority of the state over these great enterprises of the general interest remains entire. So what is the great enterprise, Morris? This is what we really have to focus in on here. What is the great enterprise that our Moorish state gets to do what? Oversee with what? The authority. What authority? The authority of the state, right? What is that we're overseeing? Let's talk about that a little bit more today. Okay. Monopoly. It's just that simple. Hasbro has come out with a game because they're the trustees over our Moorish empire. And what is our Moorish empire? It is the what? It is the enterprise, the great enterprise. It is the industries. It's the public works and the public services and the people themselves. In the Act of Algeciras, it talks about the word monopoly. We have to understand as Moors that the trustees of the United States International Organization have been now overseeing the great trust, the trust territories, through this game called Monopoly. Let's take a moment and take a look at this, right? Moors are very familiar with this, but it speaks a lot of history here. What's happened? It talks about salaries. Everybody collects a salary, right, in this game. But how does this game start? The bankers are in charge, right? The banker hands out some currency, and everybody starts to go around in circles, in circles, in circles, and doing what? Getting into debt, paying rent, some people collecting rent, some people paying rent. This is about what? Listen, this game is about this foreigner overseeing our great monopoly. He's sitting right in the center of the board. Right in the center of the board, like the Wizard of Oz. Right? Listen. So the bankers, right? Like I told the Moors, it's always going to be the bankers that give us the biggest pushback. Okay. Let's take a look at this board. The great enterprise. Keep in mind, this is about Article 106 of the Act of Algeciras, okay? On this board, what do we have? Moors are very familiar with this board. It has what? Right? Public works, public services. But let's start with this first box. So the first box is about what? Salaries. Collect 200 salary as you pass go. Right? So it's working class. People get a salary that gets taxed. As soon as you start going around the board, you're paying taxes. Right? So it goes right into what? The Mediterranean. Mediterranean. What's the Mediterranean Avenue about? You know what they're telling you immediately? It's about maritime and admiralty law. What's the Mediterranean? That's a sea, right? So on this board, it's going to talk about the sea. Let's talk about the sea real quick. We're talking about the 7 seas, Moors. The 7 seas, the 7 seas. You got the Mediterranean, Baltic, right? Talking seas, Baltic, right? What else? What other seas you're talking about on here? You're talking about the Sea of the Atlantic Sea. Just a moment, I'll find it in just a minute.
Atlantic Avenue.
Atlantic Avenue, you see it? The Atlantic Avenue, what else we got? Then you come down, you got what?
Pacific Avenue.
Pacific Avenue. You see, they got the names of what? Seas, oceans, water. But they tell you that as soon as the game starts, Mediterranean. What's the Mediterranean all about? What's that all about? What is the seven seas? The seven seas is what? North Atlantic, South Atlantic. North Pacific, South Pacific.
Oh, that's how they do it.
North Atlantic pole, right? Antarctic, North Arctic, South Arctic, right? And then the Indian Ocean. And all the other seas, such as the Black Sea, Mediterranean Sea, right? The Gulf of Mexico, etc. All these seas come into each other. They call it the seven seas, right? And what splits it in the middle? The equator, right? That's how you get north and south, right? So
Caspian Sea.
Caspian Sea, that's correct. So what's happening? As soon as the game opens up, it starts talking about seas immediately, right? Mediterranean. Okay? So after that, it goes into what? Community chest. Treasury. Right? So after that, it goes right into taxes. Taxes, income tax. Right? So you pay taxes. Then it's going right into public works, public services, all over the board, right? So you got the trains. What else you got? You got what? Trains on all four sides, right? Your public services, public works. What else you got? You got the electric company, right? You got the water company. What else you got? You got the light bulb, right? All the boards know about this. Elementary. Right? Now what about this right here? This jail. Well, what is that? Well, hold up. Okay, so you got the cop down here in the corner. It says go to jail. You go to jail up here in this corner. Right? What's that about? That's public services. What's public services about? Consular court, Supreme Court, civil and criminal jurisdiction. So this whole game is about salaries, treasury. It's about ocean, admiralty and maritime law. It's about income tax, right? It's about your public services and public works. It's about civil and criminal jurisdiction of courts, right? What else is this game about? It's about property in general. It's property. This is the great enterprise, the monopoly. And who's controlling the monopoly the whole time? The bankers. The bankers make all the money in the game, right? They hand out the first debt to everyone, and everybody's indebted to the bank. You have to understand more. This is the great enterprise they've been talking about the entire time. And who sits in the middle of the board? Bankers. Right? They're watching everything.
Federal Reserve.
Federal Reserve, right? I'm just trying to get them more as a visual. This is what we're talking about. So what are we talking about right now? This is the great enterprise. All these so-called states, they're not states, what are they? Charter colonies, constituent charter states, organs of an international organization, right? Municipal corporations, all caps. It's our job to oversee these great enterprises that's controlling what within our Moorish states. What are they doing right now in Morocco? That's what they're doing. They're controlling the monopoly. But they're also controlling what else? The Moorish ports. That's where they're talking about the seas. They're controlling our Moorish ports. They're controlling the trade routes of all the oceans, the sea coast. They're controlling the banks. They control the military. They control the police. They control the currency. They control the public works. They control the public services. They control the public utilities. They control the legislation. They control the courts. They're controlling everything. Why? Because they're trustees. How did they end up becoming trustees? Well, first of all, they usurped us, right? Through its cheap hypothecation. And then after a while, the Moors acquiesced because we started acting like the colonists. Until Noble Drew Ali started dropping it. This is what we got to understand. What else is going on? Listen. So you got the United States, all these corporations, but let's take a different visual. Listen. What if I showed you that? Now you see enterprises, right? You see corporations, right? It's called layman's term, using things we're familiar with seeing. But this visual right here is no different than that. It's the same. It's semantics. Because there's no difference between these corporations and these corporations. They're all corporations. But what's the difference? These corporations have registered their corporation names with who? Who did they put their names on the registration with? Secretary of State, all caps state, of each one of the territories, right? So take for instance Coors Light, beer company, has registered their corporation with who? Commonly known as the state of Colorado, all caps, a constituent chartered state, right? So all the corporations have now registered with this particular corporation right here as being the umbrella company on behalf of who? Coors. But wait a minute. This corporation, commonly known as Colorado, is under the umbrella of who?
United States.
United States, right? But who else is the state of Colorado Corporation under now? Okay. Now, it's in the Empire of Morocco based upon what? The fact that AMPAC has proclaimed their latitude, longitude of the state. Right? So going back, AMPAC has taken over the Uti Pasadena jurisdiction of this territory. And now Colorado is underneath the umbrella of AMPAC. As an example, they have to register their corporation with AMPAC. No different than Coors have to register its corporation with the state of Colorado, all caps. This is what Moors have to understand. All of the corporations in Morocco are foreign. And if they don't register their corporations with our Moor states, that makes their corporations now aliens, right? Illegal aliens in Morocco. What makes them illegal aliens? It's because they haven't registered with our Moor state. All corporations that are foreign must register with your Moor state. That way we can govern them. Enforce our Moroccan laws against them.
And tax them.
And tax them. That is correct. And control the public works and public services, public utilities, so that we can start to govern what again? The monopoly. Our job is to be sitting right here. That's where we're supposed to be sitting. At our committee meetings. Right in the center. This is important to understand. Let's continue. All right, Article 106. In case the Sharifian government should invoke the aid of foreign capital, of foreign industry, for the working of public services or for the operation of public works, roads, railways, ports, telegraphs, and other public works, the signatory powers reserve to themselves the right to see it that the authority of the state, Moor state, over these great enterprises of the general interest remains entire. What are they talking about? The monopoly. But Moors oversee it. That must be understood. We'll talk more about that. Okay, let's move on. Article 107. The validity of the concessions which may be made under the terms of Article 106, as well as for government supplies, shall, throughout the Sharifian Empire, be subordinated to the principle of public awards or proposals without preference of nationality, whenever applicable under the rules followed in foreign laws. What's happening here? Okay. Now, you remember what I told you. Let's read it again. The validity of concessions, Article 107, the validity of concessions which may be made under the terms of Article 106. Under Article 106, we said we're allowing the great enterprise to exist while we govern it. And while we're governing, we're learning what? Let's go back. What are we learning while we're governing this monopoly? We're learning how to do what? The consciousness on how to run our own corporations, run our own governments, run our own states. Eventually we will transition, right? We're trying to acclimate into understanding how to run the monopoly. Over a period of time, we will learn how to run this great monopoly without even anyone's assistance. This is what we must understand. We have to first learn again. Give it some time. We won't need anyone's assistance. However, the treaty says we give them an opportunity to still remain in Morocco, give them an opportunity to have their dignity, to have jobs, enterprise, etc. Why? Because we're in a bilateral treaty with the United States of America. This is their home. That must be understood. They're tenants in Morocco. Allow your tenants to enjoy their stay while you learn how to manage the property. That's our job. This is serious business moves. So Article 107, the validity of the concessions which may be made under the terms of Article 106, as well as the government supplies shall, throughout the Sharifian Empire, be subordinated to the principle of public awards or proposals, without preference to nationality, whenever applicable under the rules followed in foreign laws. Right? What's that about?
Equal opportunity.
Equal opportunity. To do what? Bid on jobs, bid on contracts. This is about contract law. GSA, right?
General Services Administration.
That's right. General Services Administration. GSA hands out contracts all the time. No bidding contracts, or you bid on contracts to perform what? Public works, public utilities in the Empire of Morocco to help with what? The infrastructure, etc. This is what this is about. Why are they talking about nationality, right? Why they can't say without preference of nationality? What's that about? At first it used to be 12 signatory powers. Now it's only one. So there's no more signatory powers, it's just one. Which means now Moors can bring in anyone we want. The United States as a nationality for their people. But we can also petition who? Mexico, Colombia, Haiti, any state we want to come in and petition to bid on what? Infrastructure type of contracts. Because they can be what? Without preference of nationality. And now, since the United States of America is the only signatory power left, we can bring in even other states to come in and bid on anything we want in terms of works, public services, public works and public utilities in Morocco. That must be understood. Let's get into Article 108. It'll make a little bit more sense. Article 108. As soon as the Sharifian government shall have decided to invite proposals for execution of public works, it shall so inform the diplomatic body. It shall later communicate to it the plans, specifications, and all documents annexed to the call for proposals in order to enable the nationals of all the signatory powers to form a clear idea of the contemplated works and compete for the same. A sufficient term for this shall be specified in the call for proposals. Well, guess what? There's no more diplomatic body. It used to be 12 colonies, countries, states. Now it's only one, United States of America. But the United States of America only exists in name only. Who controls now the great enterprise, the United States Municipal Corporation? So therefore, the Moorish states can now petition for any state to come in and perform work. We can petition even India, right? India as a state can come in and perform services such as set up IT for us. Through what? Contracts. This is how we govern Moors. We get into what? Cooperation with other states to work together. This is how the United States built such a great enterprise. What did they do? They opened their borders and say, y'all come over here and work and pay taxes and build this infrastructure. That's the same thing the Sultan did to the United States of America. He said, United States of America, I'm going to let your 13 colonies stay here and y'all going to start working on that infrastructure. I'll give you a place to stay as a tenant. You start getting into trade and commerce with me.
So that's what they did with the Germans also.
Yes, the Germans,
over here.
the Italians, the Irish, the Japanese, you name it. You must understand what's happening right now. Sidi Muhammad was the first to let the 13 colonies stay here so they could be what? The industry that he put together. For the purposes of what? So he could tax them. Going back to the game of Monopoly.
Sidi Muhammad did that?
Yes, he allowed the United States of America to stay here as 13 colonies from the year 1777 up until this day. The treaties have allowed the United States of America to remain in Morocco. Okay, so what's the first box? Salary. So all the immigrants with an I came over to Morocco and became immigrants with an E, seeking permanent residence in Morocco. To do what? Become a labor force. That's what Sidi Muhammad set up. And the United States of America took it from there and started to build this great enterprise. So the Moors set this up first. The Moroccans set up this great enterprise first to bring the United States of America into our land. Now we must get back and restore the understanding of who's the person that's superior in the treaties based upon them being contracts, and it's the Moorish state governments to oversee the great enterprise that Sidi Muhammad started. That must be understood. Let's take it from the top. Article 108, excuse me. As soon as the Sharifian government shall have decided to invite proposals for execution of public works. So we're doing what? Well, we got a job over here. We got some roads, some bridges we want fixed or built. We send out what? A contract that says, here's the scope. Here's the scope, right? Specifications. People want to bid on this.
RFP,
Exactly.
What'd you say?
request for proposal,
Oh.
an RFP.
And it continues on. So inform the diplomatic body. So they're informing the diplomatic body about what? That there's a contract that all 12 of the colonies can bid on a contract. That way they can make some money, right? But there's no more diplomatic body anymore. It was vacated. It's absent. It remains in name only. It's absent. It's vacated. There is no more diplomatic body. It shall later communicate to it the plans, specifications, and all documents annexed to the call for proposals in order to enable the nationals of all the signatory powers to form a clear idea of the contemplated works and compete for the same. They're supposed to be competing for jobs where? In Morocco. A sufficient term for this shall be specified in the call for proposals. Article 109. The specification shall not contain, either directly or indirectly, any conditions or provisions which may be prejudicial to free competition and which may give advantage to competitors of one nationality over those of another nationality. What's going on here? So when we submit an opportunity for them to bid on a job, it must be equal opportunity. So once again, it's talking about this word what? Nationality. Can't be any disadvantages dealing with the competitors who are competing for these contracts in Morocco. This is how GSA, etc. came to be. The colonists have been following the instructions of the treaties.
Economic liberty without inequality.
Economic liberty without any inequality. That's correct. That's correct, Mark. Thank you. So we, as Moors, governing over our own great enterprise within our uti possidetis jurisdiction of our state, we oversee these contracts. That must be understood. This is how we slowly but surely get back into understanding how to govern the affairs of our own homeland. Slowly but surely. We oversee everything regarding what? Public works, public services, public utilities, i.e. what? Our monopoly. That involves taxes, courts, law enforcement, real estate, Moorish ports, trade routes, contracts, banks, currency, gold, etc. Let's get back to the treaty. Article 110. The contracts shall be awarded in the form and according to the general conditions prescribed by the regulations which the Sharifian government shall draw up with the assistance of the diplomatic body.
Article 110. The contract shall be awarded in the form and according to the general conditions prescribed by the regulations which the Sharifian government shall draw up with the assistance of the diplomatic body. The contract shall be awarded by the Sharifian government to the bidder who, while conforming himself to the specifications, shall have submitted the bid fulfilling the most advantageous general conditions. Article 111. The rules of Articles 106 to 110 shall be applied to concessions for working cork forests in accordance with the customary provisions in foreign laws. Article 112. The Sharifian firman shall determine the conditions of the concessions and the working of mines and quarries. In the composition of this firman, the Sharifian government shall be guided by foreign laws relating to such matters. Article 113. If in the cases mentioned in Articles 106 to 112, it should become necessary to occupy certain property, its expropriation may be effected by previous payment of a fair indemnity in conformity to the following rules. Article 114. Expropriation can only be effected on the ground of public utility and when necessity for the same shall have been ascertained by any administrative investigation, the formalities of which shall be determined by Sharifian regulations drawn up with the assistance of the diplomatic body.
Okay, thank you, Mother. Let's go back up to Article 110. Let's go ahead and recap. All right, so Article 110. The contracts. These are about contracts. What type of contracts? Public works, public utility, right? The contracts shall be awarded in the form and according to the general conditions prescribed by the regulations. What's regulations?
legislation. Of whose legislation? Moroccan legislation, right? Moroccan law. Which the Sharifian government shall draw up. You see that? So who oversees the contracts? Who oversees public works, public utilities, public services?
The Moors.
The Moors. Sharifian government shall draw up. Right? But then it has a little catch. Listen, with the assistance of the diplomatic body. Well, where's the diplomatic body? They vacated. So who's left? United States of America. Well, that's not a body. That's an individual. So what happens by default? Everything now goes back to simply treaty rights. The treaty rights say what? Bilateral treaties between who? Moors and the United States of America. See how that works? So there's no diplomatic body. It's just Moors. What type of Moors? Moroccan Moors. And who? Americans. What type of Americans? Citizens of the United States of America. However, there might not be no citizens of the United States of America once we start doing our investigations. Right? We'll learn more about this in the future. I just bring it up. Because you got to understand, the United States of America is void of a government. They don't have a president. They don't have a legislative branch. They don't have a judicial branch. According to their own statutes, everybody's a citizen of what? United States. The president takes his oath to who? United States. The vice president takes her, we're in the year 2022, her oath to who? United States. Who are the legislators? House of Representatives and the Senate, who they take their oath to? United States. No one takes their oath to the United States of America.
But the treaties are with the United States of America.
That's correct. So the United States of America exists in name only, just like the empire. The empire exists to this very day, but it's void of what? A central government. So the seats have been vacated, right?
The Moroccan Empire.
The Moroccan Empire government as a central government. This is why it's important and vital for the Moors to enact constitutions in each of the territories, in which each territory, everywhere the colonists is claiming to have a constitution, those Moors are obligated to reclaim, to restore on the post-millennium per consanguinity and per uti possidetis jurisdiction, restore a constitution for that particular latitude and longitude. We'll talk more about this in the future. Okay? Article 110. The contract shall be awarded in the form and according to the general conditions prescribed by the regulations, which is legislation, which the Sharifian government, Moorish government, shall draw up with the assistance of the diplomatic body. Let's continue. The contracts shall be awarded by the Sharifian government. The contract shall be awarded by the Sharifian government. The contracts shall be awarded by who? Moorish government. To the bidder, who, while conforming himself to the specifications, shall have submitted the bid fulfilling the most advantageous general conditions. So who oversees these contracts? Moorish governments. What type of Moorish governments? Competent Moorish governments. What type of Moors? Moroccan Moors. That's it. Let's continue. Let's get into Article 111. The rules of Article 106 to 110 shall be applied to concessions for working cork forests in accordance with the customary provisions and foreign laws. Right? So, cork forest, right? Wine bottles have a cork inside of it. It's just trees that make the cork. Right? They were talking about corks back then, 1906. All right? Okay, let's move on. Article 112. The Sharifian firm shall determine the conditions of the concessions and the working of mines and quarries. In composition of this firming, the Sharifian government shall be guided by the foreign laws relating to such matters. So what's happening here? Now remember, Moors, we looked up this word firming, right? Let's recap. We looked up the word firming. Mother?
1, a sovereign's edict. Decree, synonyms are decree, order, command, commandment, proclamation, mandate. 2, a grant or permit. Synonyms are authorization, license, pass, voucher, ticket, warrant, document, certification, passport, visa.
All right. So, when we were studying the word firman, it says the sovereign's edict, right? What's the edict? Let's refresh. Edict.
Edict, noun. 1, an official order or proclamation issued by a person in authority. Clovis issued an edict protecting church property. Synonyms: decree, firman, order, command, commandment, mandate, proclamation, pronouncement, dictum, dictate, fiat, bill, promulgation, law, statute, act, enactment, ordinance, regulation, rule, ruling, injunction, manifesto.
All right. So the edict is an official order, right? Who's that coming from? Going back to your treaty. It's coming from the Sharifian. It's a Sharifian order, right? The Sharifian regulation, the Sharifian legislation, Sharifian decrees, ministerial decrees, right? Orders, judgments, opinions, right? Bottom line is, it's just law, right? So the Sharifian firman shall determine the conditions of concessions and the working of mines and quarries, okay? Now, we all know what mines and quarries are, right? Mines, we're talking about what? Land, right? So some things on the surface of the land, some things you got to dig into the land to get access to it, such as what? Oil, coal, gold, right? Quartz, granite, limestone, right? Anything that comes out of the land, right? Okay. Who talks about mines and quarries? Let's get into this. This is the rights of indigenous people. 2007. That's the document I have on the screen right now. So the United Nations put together the rights of indigenous people for the indigenous people, i.e. the Moors, the original inhabitants of Morocco, to start to enforce certain provisions of international law. Mother, Article 32, please.
1, indigenous peoples have the right to determine and develop priorities and strategies for the development or use of their lands or territories and other resources. 2, states shall consult and cooperate in good faith with the indigenous peoples concerned through their own representative institutions in order to obtain their free and informed consent prior to the approval of any project affecting their lands or territories and other resources, particularly in connection with the development, utilization, or exploitation of mineral, water, or other resources. 3, states shall provide effective mechanisms for just and fair redress for any such activities, and appropriate measures shall be taken to mitigate adverse environmental, economic, social, cultural, or spiritual impact.
Okay, thank you, Mother. So the Moors got to understand, where is the United Nations getting these provisions from? Our Moorish treaties, right? Our Moorish treaties. Listen, Article 32 of the Rights of Indigenous People of the year 2007. Indigenous people. Let's change that to what? Competent Moorish states, right? Competent Moorish states have the right to determine and develop priorities and strategies for the development or use of their lands or territories and other resources. What is that all about? Strategies, that's called law, right? Let's go back to your treaty. Firmans, which is law. You put together what? Policies, procedures, law, Moroccan law, regulations, right? To govern your land. To govern what? Listen. The monopoly. Right? Because the monopoly is taking place on what? This looks like a board, but what is it really? The land, the territory, and all of the resources. That who's governing it? Someone's, the trustees of the foreign trustees are governing it right now. We got to take it back. How? With the pen. Through what? Competent legislation of our states. Listen. Rights and Indigenous People, Article 32, Section 2 states, shall consult and cooperate in good faith. Let's start all over. And this one, how they start off? The United States of America and its international organization, commonly known as the United States Municipal Corporation, shall consult and cooperate in good faith with the competent Moorish state government and its people concerned through their, who's the there? The competent Moorish state and its nationals, their own representative institutions, in order to obtain their free and informed consent prior to the approval of any project affecting their land or territories and other resources, particularly in connection with the development, utilization, or exploitation of mineral, water, or other resources. Exploitation of what? Minerals? Go back to your treaty, Morris. Mines and quarries. Dealing with what? What oversees all that? Firmans. Who oversees the firmans? The Sharifian government, i.e. Moorish governments. The United Nations is reading your treaties, Moors. They're trying to help you indigenous people, i.e. Moors. What type of Moors? Moroccan Moors. To enforce your own treaties. How do I know they're talking to you to get you to enforce your treaties? Let's go back to the Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People. Look at these words they're using. Listen. These are not subtleties, Moors. Listen to me. Section 2. States shall consult in cooperation in good faith. In good faith. Okay? In good faith. You see that? In good faith. Cooperate in good faith. You think that's just some subtle word they put in there to be nice? It has meaning, doesn't it? Where did we get this word from? Where did they get the word from? The Vienna Convention on the Law of Treaties of 1969. Right in what? The preamble. It says what? I know it's small print for our viewers at home. Mother, can you read that for me, that sentence?
Noting that the principles of free consent and of good faith and the Pacta Sunt Servanda rule are universally recognized.
Thank you. This is the law of what? The law of what? Treaties.
Treaties.
So you go back to Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People. United States of America and their municipal corporation known as the United States shall consult and cooperate in good faith. What's good faith all about? Enforcing the treaties.
Amity and friendship.
Amity and friendship, right? Amity and commerce. With who? Competent Moorish state governments and their peoples concerned through their own representative states, institutions, in order to obtain their free and informed consent prior to the approval of any project. Free and informed consent prior. Free and informed consent prior. Listen. Going back to what? The Vienna Convention 1969 says what? Noting that the principles of free consent and of good faith. You see that? Free consent. Law of treaties. Go back to Rights of Indigenous People. Their free and informed consent. You got to understand what's happening here more. It's about the law of treaties. Let's go back. Vienna Convention 1969, right? Vienna Convention 1969. What is this? Good faith and Pacta Sunt Servanda, right? Our viewers at home. Good faith and pacta sunt servanda rule. What was that rule? That's Article 26 of the Vienna Convention of 1969. Was about the law of treaties, right? Let's go down to it. What we got here? Article 26. Pacta sunt servanda. This is about good faith. Okay, what's the title about? Let's read the title. Mother, part 3, please.
Observance, application, and interpretation of treaties. Section 1, observance of treaties. Article 26, pacta sunt servanda. Every treaty in force is binding upon the parties to it and must be performed by them in good faith.
Thank you, Mother. Let's examine the title. Article 26 of the Vienna Convention of 1969 about pacta sunt servanda, which means promises must be kept. Promises must be kept. Promises must be kept. What promises? Promises to what? Observance of treaties. So they keep right here, it says observance, application, and interpretation of treaties. See this word application? Where do you find that word application in? In our treaties of peace and friendship. Article 24 talks about what? Friendly applications. That's in our treaties. Article 24, right? Then it gets into it. It says, okay, pacta sunt servanda. Promises must be kept. Of what? Observance of treaties. So it says right here, every treaty in force is binding. Every treaty in force is binding upon the parties to it and must be performed by them in good faith. Good faith, right? Let's go back. Rights of indigenous people. And good faith. You think that's just a salty word they put in there?
No.
They're talking about what? What are you trying to tell indigenous people? Enforce what? Your treaties, Moors. Enforce your treaties, Moors. But you have to do what in order to enforce your treaties? You need a state. This is what they say, their own representative institutions. What's your institution? Your state. Your organized jewel society. Your institution is your state and your 3 branches of government. Your consular court. Your laws. Going back to your treaty. Act Out Sarah of 1906, Article 112, the Sharifian Firman. So Sharifian is government exercising what? Legislation shall determine the conditions of the concessions and the working of mines and quarries. Which is what? Going back to rights of indigenous people, it's about what? Your lands, Moors, or your territories, Moors, or other resources, Moors, such as oil, water. And we have the obligation to oversee this through what? Our states. Let's look at number 3. Number 3, rights of indigenous people, Article 32. Okay? Article 32. Number 3, states shall provide effective mechanisms for just and fair redress for any such activities. Let's start all over. United States of America and the United States International Organization shall provide effective mechanism. What's the effective mechanism? Laws. We got to get into cooperation, foreign relations, diplomatic relations. Effective mechanisms for just and fair redress for any such activities, and appropriate measures shall be taken to mitigate adverse environmental, economic, social, cultural, or spiritual impact. What's happening right now in Mississippi? What's happening in Michigan right now? Michigan and Mississippi in the year 2022, September 22, they still dealing with what? Water. They got water shortages. They can't drink the water. Mississippi, Jackson, Mississippi, as of September 2022, can't drink the water. They can't bathe in the water. They can't brush their teeth. They can't cook with it. Nothing. When the Moors of Mississippi restore their competent Moorish state. They're obligated to come back and do what? And deal with the privateers to deal with what? Mississippi as a what? Constituent chartered state, i.e. an organ of an international organization, i.e. a municipal corporation, i.e. a franchisee of the franchisor, Mississippi shall provide effective mechanisms for just and fair redress for any such activities, and appropriate measures shall be taken to mitigate adverse environmental, economic, social, cultural, and spiritual impact. What's going to happen? They have to pay for what they've done to our land and our precious water. But only the Moors can do that. Moors have to do what? We have to have competent Moorish states and enact legislation through consular court and enforce it through consular court to get restitution, reparations, redress, reconcile this.
And we can request aid from other nations
That's correct.
who have certain
Mechanisms to assist
mechanisms
with
with
the
that.
fresh water. That's
Yeah.
correct. What's happened in Mississippi? Jackson, Mississippi, as a point of interest. You got a private corporation called Mississippi, State of Mississippi, who's hired a private corporation to come over and oversee public utility. Two corporations, all they care about was the profits. They didn't care about the people. Jackson, Mississippi is full of who? Negroes, blacks, coloreds, African Americans,
So is Flint.
and Flint, Michigan. And guess who else lived there? Moorish Americans. Who are not Moorish Americans. They're descendants of Moroccans born in America. How did you end up being born in America? You were naturalized in America. But Noble Drew Ali told you you are a descendant of Moroccans born in America. What does that mean? So there's a word missing in that sentence. We are descendants of Moroccans. This is what Noble Drew Ali said. Born in America. Well, how were we born? We were naturalized in America. That's what our treaties say. Treaty of Madrid, 1880, Article 15, paragraph 1 said we were what? We're subjects in Morocco that have been naturalized in a foreign country. Noble Drew Ali himself said we are Moroccans. We are descendants of Moroccans that have been naturalized in a foreign country called America. Let's get back to point. I needed to show them more. This is what this treaty is talking about. The Moors got to understand that the rights of indigenous people is about enforcing treaties through statehood. The Vienna Convention of 1969 says what? What's the first thing they say? The states parties to the present convention. States, not individual Moors. That's the first word. States. What does Article 1 say? Okay, let's go to Article 1. We got to stay right here for just a moment. For just a moment. Article 1 says what? Article 1. Mother?
Scope of the present convention. The present convention applies to treaties between states.
Period. So now you go back. The Vienna Convention 1969 giving specific instructions that Moors needed states in order to enforce their own treaties. And once you have a state, and in here they're talking code, and they say, you Moors, through your own representative institutions, which is your state. You got to understand what's happening here, Moors. Okay, let's get back to the treaty. Article 112. The Sharifian firman shall determine the conditions of the concessions and the working of mines and quarries. A composition of this firman The Sharifian government shall be guided by the foreign laws related to such matters. It's all about laws, Moors. Article 113. If in the cases mentioned in Articles 106 to 112, it should become necessary to occupy certain property, its expropriation may be effected by previous payment of a fair indemnity in conformity to the following rules. What's happening here? What's happening here? What's happening? Article 113. If in a case mentioned in Article 106 to 112, it should become necessary to occupy certain property. What's happening? The Moorish state government might need to do what? Occupy certain properties to deal with what? Public utility. Eminent domain, right? The government now is taking land in order to put in infrastructure to take care of the people, right? If in the cases mentioned in Articles 106 to 112, it should become necessary to occupy certain property. So what happened in 106 to 112? Contracts are being handed out. To do what? Public works, public utility, right? Right? They put in the infrastructure, right? Its expropriation may be affected by previous payment. What's expropriation? Let's get into that. Expropriation. Okay. Expropriation. Mother?
Verb 1, especially of the state. Take away property from its owner. Government plans to expropriate farmland. Synonyms: seize, take away, take over, take, appropriate, take possession of, requisition, commandeer, claim, make claim to, assume, acquire, sequestrate.
Mm-hmm. So the state now is coming in to do what? The state, capital S, is taking away some property from some who? Owners. What type of owners? Private owners. Right? The state, the public state is taking away private land from people. Okay? Let's get into it. Go back to your treaty. Act out of Sarah, 1906. Article 113. If in the case mentioned in Articles 106 to 112, it should become necessary to occupy certain property, the expropriation may be affected by previous pay. So the taking of property, right? Must be done with what? Fair indemnity in conformity to the following rule. What's indemnity? Okay. What's indemnity? All right. What's the definition of indemnity? Mother?
Verb 1, compensate someone for harm or loss. Synonyms: reimburse, compensate, recompense, repay, pay back, remunerate, recoup, requite, make restitution, amends to, settle up with, settle accounts with.
All right. Thank you, Mother. So, in other words, the Moors government have to compensate someone, right? For what? Some harm or loss when we take their properties, right? Okay, let's go back to your treaty. So, when the Moors now have to take some property, we got to give fair what? Value, fair value, market value. In conformity to the following rules. So now they're going to set forth the rules of how we come up with the value of the property that the Moor states have to take. Okay? All right. Article 114. Expropriation can only be effected on the ground of public utility. And when necessary, when necessity for the same shall have been ascertained by any administrative investigation, the formalities of which shall be determined by Sharifian regulation, Sharifian law, drawn up with the assistance of the diplomatic body. Okay? So anytime we have to take some land, it can only be done because we need it to do what? For public utility. Right? For public utility. And then in 1906, they put a little extra clause. And when the necessity for the same shall have been ascertained by any administrative investigation. So you got to be an investigation to make sure we're taking lands as appropriated lands only for public utility, right? If in fact we gotta take some land, okay? Let's get into Article 115, Mother. If you can start reading that, 115 to 119.
Okay. If the property holders are Moorish subjects, His Sharifian Majesty shall take the necessary measures that no hindrance shall impede the execution of works that he shall have declared to be of public utility. Article 116. If the owners are foreigners, the method of expropriation shall be as follows. In case of disagreement between the competent administration and the owner of the property to be expropriated, the indemnity shall be fixed by a special jury, or if the occasion arises, by arbitration. Article 117. This jury shall be composed of 6 expert appraisers, these to be selected by the owner, 3 to be selected by the owner, 3 by the administration desiring to expropriate. A majority vote shall rule. If there be no majority, the owner and the administration shall each appoint an arbitrator, and the 2 arbitrators shall name an umpire. In case no agreement can be reached in selecting an umpire, he shall be appointed by the diplomatic body at Tangier. Article 118. The arbitrators shall be selected from a list drawn up at the beginning of each year by the diplomatic body, and they shall be selected, as far as possible, from experts not living within the district in which the work is to be carried out. Article 119. The owner may appeal from the arbitrator's decision to a competent jurisdiction and in accordance with the rules set for arbitration cases by the law of the country to which he belongs.
Okay, thank you, Mother. We're going back on up to Article 114, and we'll recap. Okay, so they're setting forth rules, right? Setting forth rules on how you do what? Expropriate land, right? So the government's taking land because we need to develop it for public utility, right? So here's what they set forth in the treaty. Article 114, expropriation can only be effected on the ground of public utility, and when necessary for the same shall have been ascertained by any administrative investigation, the formalities of which shall be determined by Sharifian regulations, drawn up with the assistance of the diplomatic body. Article 115, if the property holders are Moorish subjects, His Sharifian Majesty shall take the necessary measures that no hindrance shall impede the execution of works that he shall have declared to be public utility. So what's happening here? Why are they making this a special article in 115? Because Moors are the indigenous people of the land. And if you're taking their property, who can only deal with them directly? The Moor state government. That's it. The colonists didn't have no right to try to take land from competent Moors, right? Couldn't do it. Only the Moor state government could do that. Only the Sultan could do that, to take land away from Moors. Period. That's why I have this own article, 115. Now watch what happens in 116. Okay. However, Article 116, if the owners are foreigners, the method of expropriation shall be as follows. In case of disagreement between the competent administration and the owner of the property to be expropriated, the indemnity shall be fixed by a special jury, or, if the occasion arises, by arbitration. So now they give the foreigners an opportunity to do what? What's happening here? So the foreigners can say, listen, I don't want my land to be taken. So I'd like to appeal this. It gives them an opportunity to come in and have recourse, right? To bring in what? Some appraisers. We're going to learn about the appraisers. It's not about the fact they can keep their house. They can't keep the property. But we have to give them fair value for the property, right? Let's listen. Article 117. This jury shall be composed of 6 expert appraisers. Appraisers, not judges. Appraisers, because we're talking about value proposition. 3 to be selected by the owner. 3 by the administration desiring to expropriate. A majority vote shall rule out of the 6 appraisers. Right? So you got 6 appraisers. If you have 4 appraisals that come in, you get an average of those. That ends up being the ruling of the value of that property, right? continue. If there be no majority, the owner and administration shall each appoint an arbitrator, and the two arbitrators shall name an umpire. Someone to oversee the two arbitrators, right? They bring in a third party, right, to be a referee. Listen. In case no agreement can be reached in selecting an umpire, he shall be appointed by a diplomatic body at Tangier. Let's read again. In case no agreement can be reached in selecting an umpire, he shall be appointed by the diplomatic body at Tangier. Well, there's no more diplomatic body. You see what's happening? They vacated the diplomatic body, so that provision is moot now. Okay, so what happens next? Okay, listen, it's going to tell you what you do now in the absence of the diplomatic body. Article 118, the arbitrators shall be selected from a list drawn up at the beginning of each year by the diplomatic body. There is no diplomatic body. And they shall be selected as far as possible from the experts not living within the district in which the work is to be carried out. Listen, here's the catch. Article 119, the owner may appeal from arbitrator's decision. Let's say the owner still don't like the arbitrator's decision. What happens? Last but not least, to a competent jurisdiction and in accordance with the rules set forth arbitration cases by the law of the country to which he belongs. What's happening? So in the end, Article 119 does what? Article 119, the owner may appeal from the arbitrator's decision to a competent jurisdiction and in accordance with the rules set forth arbitration cases by the law of the country in which he belongs. So where's the country? Morocco. Keep in mind now, Article 119 deals with what? What does Article 119 deal with? Article 119. Let's see if I have it up. That's the France versus United States of America, 1952. Talks about what? It talks about Article 119 being one of the provisions that the Moors can utilize to enforce their Moroccan law. I don't have it up today. I usually do. But that's what we utilize, Article 119. The Moors go back and look at France versus United States of America, 1952, right? And it talks about all the articles of the Act out of Service to enforce it. Article 119 is one of those provisions, right? So what happens at the end of the day? If we're taking land away from the foreigners for public utility purposes, they can bring in an appraiser. But if the owner rejects the appraisals, the owner can do what? They can bring their dispute to consular court. And the consular court of Moroccan consular court of the competent Moor state will make the final decision. That's the bottom line. That's what Moors got to take away from this. Okay? So now we're at the end of the reading, right, of chapter 6. But what's happening? What do we really got to focus in on, Moors? Let's go back up to Articles 105 and 106. This chapter 6 is about a declaration relative to public services and public works. Who's supposed to be overseeing it? Competent Moor states, right? Article 105 immediately tells you what? With a view to assuring the application to the principle of economic liberty without any inequality. The signatory powers declared, meaning they agree, that none of the public services in the Sharifian Empire can be alienated for the advantage of private interest. So what's happening? Listen, this is important to understand. What's happening right now? What is our private interest? What is our public service? Go back to the treaty. They can't do anything to do what? Alienate what? Our public services. What's public services? Let's go back to it as a refresher. Public services. The term public services often includes, but not limited to, legislators, courts, law enforcement officers, tax commissioners, education, electricity, energy, services, environmental protection, healthcare, mail, military, public buildings, public libraries, public parks, public policy, public utilities, public transportation, social services, state schools, telecommunications, transportation, infrastructure, urban planning, waste management, water supply, network, etc. Right? So what are we talking about? Let's go back to it. Monopoly. It's your monopoly boards. That's what they're talking about. They're overseeing your great monopoly. Who's overseeing it? The trustees of the United States. More specifically, of who? Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve Board is overseeing the great enterprises. Right? What's happening? You see this? Everybody knows what this is, right? What is this? Okay, let's go to it. What is this? That's what we're looking at right now, right? We've talked about this. Let's go back to it. The pyramid, right? The pyramid has what? A shadow underneath it. All the Moors know about the shadow. What's the shadow represent? The shadow government, the de facto government that looks like the number 7. Right? You see the 7? 7, right? Listen, watch. Now I got it upside down. Listen. Now do you see the 7? 7 right here. 7 right here. 7 right here. See the shadow? Right? Let's go back to it for clarity's sake. So there's a shadow government going on. This is the Federal Reserve members overseeing the trust. Right? That's the 7, which is the 7. And they put the 7 right here because it's called color of law. What does color of law mean? Hidden, right? Concealed. Shadow government. So what are they trying to tell you, Morris? Listen. They're trying to tell you this 7 right here, the 7 right here, is overseeing what? It's overseeing the United States. This is the United States seal, right? The United States never uses this as the seal. But yet, right underneath here it says the Great Seal. Listen. It says the Great Seal. Well, that's the Great Seal with a pyramid on it. But there's a shadow government with a 7 running the Great Seal. What's the Great Seal about? The Moorish Empire. As trustees. Who are the trustees? Okay. Now you got to start understanding something. Article 22 of the Treaty of Peace and Friendship. It's about what? If an American citizen shall die in our country and no will shall appear, the council shall take possession of his effects. And if there should be no council, the effects shall be deposited in the hands of some person worthy of trust. So our empire, our great enterprise, our monopoly was placed in the hands of their trust. Going back to their dollar. You see right here? In God we trust. In God we trust. It's all about what? The trust. Right? So who's overseeing? The Federal Reserve members, right? Just a moment. Okay, more. So what's happening? Who's the trustees? Right? Who's the trustees? Federal Reserve. Right? The Federal Reserve is year 2022. Board of Governors. How many people got seats? Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Right? 7. Listen. Shadow government. 7. 7. Shadow government. Right? So now you go back over here. this shadow government is now overseen as trustees. They're overseeing what? The United States. But wait a minute. I thought the Federal Reserve said the dollar, i.e. the fiat says the United States of America, all caps, and then you look right underneath their so-called eagle, because it's not an American eagle, it's an indigenous eagle to where? Morocco. It's Moroccan eagle. Right underneath the eagle, it says of the United States. So you start over here, it says the Great Seal of the United States. Wait a minute. I thought it was the United States of America. Why does it say this is the United States? Two separate entities, you see? So the Federal Reserve and their 7 board members, are overseeing the United States Corporation, i.e., they're overseeing what? The monopoly. And he represents the Federal Reserve. You see? So what do the Moors need to learn to do? We got to now remove them from the seats. Our competent Moor states have to do what? We have to govern the affairs of the great enterprise with our Moroccan legislation. That's what needs to be done. In the meantime, the International Court of Justice has agreed, even though they put on the record it is unsatisfactory and an unavoidable consequence, that the United States gets to maintain to be the trustees over this great enterprise if Moors continues to do what? Acquiesce. The United States is legally and lawfully overseeing the trust. Why? Because the Moors have failed to understand Article 22 of the Treaty of Peace and Friendship. Article 22, it says what? The effects shall be deposited in the hands of some person worthy of trust. Who's the person? Persons are states. But guess who else is a person? Artificial persons. The United States International Organization is a person. Because persons are corporations. Mm-hmm. So the Federal Reserve is also a person, is a legal personality. The Federal Reserve is a legal personality called an artificial person doing business in Morocco that's overseeing the trust. Then it continues to say what? Until, so the Federal Reserve members, the 7 board members, get to oversee our trust until the party, who's the party now? More state governments, that's the party, shall appear who has the right to demand them. Who's the them? The trustees, them. Demand them to do what? To return it. With what? A pen. No more escheat and hypothecation. But if the heir to the person deceased be present, the property shall be delivered to him without interruption. Who's the heir? The Moor state governments. Who's the heir? Who is the heir, Moors? Your state constitution is the heir. Only states can be a party to treaties. Only states can enforce the constitutional provisions. Only states can have 3 branches of government. Only states can have a consular court. Only states can have Moroccan law to enforce as a firman. What's happening? Once it's delivered, without interruption, how do we do it without interruption? With a pen. We're not asking them to give it back. Our job was to tell them who we are. With our competent authority to do what? Now what? And if a will shall appear, what's the will? Constitution. The emanating document. That's sometimes referred to as what? Paramount document. shall appear the property, i.e. the territory, i.e. the land, i.e. the resources, shall descend agreeable to that will. Did it say agreeable to the United States of America? No, it says agreeable to what? The will. What's the will, Morris? Your Constitution. As soon as the council court, shall declare the validity thereof. What is your council court validating? The fact that you got what?
Constitution.
Constitution. That proclaimed what? Your dominions. That's what it's about. Udi Possidetis jurisdiction is the will. It's the emanating document. It's the paramount document. What does paramount mean? First. So all this time, Morris, as I start to wrap up, all we needed was a constitution. The good brother Noble Drew Ali tried to write a constitution, and he did. Unfortunately, he failed to check a few boxes, right? He didn't ratify, deposit, and promulgate according to international law. But no worries, because guess why? Noble Drew Ali said what? The other half hasn't been told. So now, in the 21st century, the Moors are now telling the other half, which is what? Statehood. Competent statehood. In order for us to do what? Eventually do what? Get back to Article 106. What does Article 106 say? In the case the Sharifian government should invoke the aid of foreign capital or foreign industry for the working of public services or for the operation of public works, roads, railways, ports, telegraphs, and other public works. The signatory powers reserve to themselves the right to see it that the authority of the Moorish state over these great enterprises of general interest remains entire. Our job is to oversee these great enterprises that they commonly call corporations. They commonly call their several union states, and it's all bundled into a game of monopoly. Thus the reason why on some of these things, they call them what? States. They say right here, States Avenue. States Avenue. It's about the states. This is too easy, boys. We just simply have to follow instructions, right? So what is this all about? What was Article 1? What is Chapter 106 all about? As I start to wrap up. What is it all about? A declaration relative to public services and public works is about what? Let's go to the board. The Act Algeciras of 1906, Chapter 6, Articles 105 to 119. About a declaration relative to public services and public works. But it's all about what? The triple principle. We needed what first? Sovereignty and independence, statehood. That's paramount. It's first. All we had to do is follow the instructions. What do we need second? Integrity of domains. What's that? That's your laws. That's your courts to enforce what? Your international borders of your state and everything internal within your state in good faith. And last but not least, economic liberty without any inequality. That's what this is all about. Go ahead, Mike.
But wouldn't the great enterprise also include all of the companies, the agencies or whatever that's going to be doing the public works, the public services and everything?
Yes. Great enterprise, any corporation that comes over.
Okay.
Any states that send a company over to do something, they're coming over as a corporation. No doubt about it. Yes, indeed. All right. So, okay, boys, so we're going to go ahead and wrap up. Chapter 6 is very important to Moors. Because if we don't learn how to govern the great enterprises based upon Article 106, that's what it's all about, governing the great enterprises. We have to govern the great enterprises with our state. I end with that. Islam.